let's talk business, okay? Democracy and politics shouldn't be business, but this is in essence what it is. Let's talk business. If you have $30,000 and you want to run for judge, why are you giving that to the party? Why don't you just use it for yourself? Why is it so important to give it to the party for flyers, for them to distribute it for you? That's asinine. That makes no sense at all. And when you are asking for the endorsement of the party, when you are asking for that, it shouldn't be about whether you give $30,000. Money shouldn't even be a question. This is our democracy. Participation is crucial. But what about money? Money to become slated, to become endorsed? How about, here's a novel concept. You're qualified. We believe in some of your policies. How about that? That should be the question, not can you give $30,000 for our mailers. That is not democracy.
There's nothing stopping anybody who feels they're qualified to run for judge not to come before the slating. Just put their credentials out and run. Nobody, if they come before the Democratic Party and they ask to be slated, they know that in fact that they're possibly going to be asked to contribute toward the mailers. They don't have to come before the Democratic Party. They can just certainly go out and become a candidate and run. But let me just tell you, very few of you out there today know the judges who are running. You'll get into the polling place and you'll not have an idea. Some of the, right now, the unions have mailed out their list of prospective endorsements. The Democratic Party is sending out an endorsement. But there are some very qualified people who are running, who are signed up and weren't endorsed, who will not even have a chance. Because that's the sad situation. Maybe, ladies and gentlemen, we should look at not having endorsed judges. Maybe, in fact, we should have qualified blue ribbon judges, a committee to appoint them.
Let's, Mr. Mellon, why don't you go ahead and keep the microphone here, because the next question, we'll have you go first here. This continues along what you're saying here. Sure. Specifically, what will be your criteria for slating judicial candidates, and discuss the slating of other candidates.
Well, I'm looking, I'm not on the judge slating part of the Democratic Party, okay? So the ones that I participate is in the slating of judges for the 6th sub-circuit. And the ones that, what happens with most committeemen in the different wards and the different 6 sub-circuits, they have the opportunity, it's like a round robin, they have an opportunity when it comes their turn to slate somebody that they know. I'm very proud of the people that I have slated. Kathy Pantley, Colleen Sheehan, Sharkey, who was a ex-FBI agent, are stellar judges. So that is the opportunity for the 6 sub-circuits. Sub-circuits were created to give the opportunity for minorities to have an opportunity to be slated more than they were in the general election.
Aaron, again, the question, what would be your criteria for slating judicial candidates?
The question is the same question for both of us, but I think it's different in this regard. When you ask me what would be my criteria, that's if I were to become committeeman. Next to me is a committeeman for the last 40 years. So the question is, what has he done for the last 40 years, not what his criteria will be. We can look at his past and evaluate it that way. So as far as my criteria, you need to be qualified. Now, how do you determine that? That's not easy. But we have several bar associations that evaluate judges. They do interviews. These are now lawyers that want to become judges. They do interviews to see who they've been against, who they've worked with, other judges they've been before, to determine whether they have the right demeanor, whether they have the right legal acumen, whether they have the ability to wear the robe. So I think I would rely a lot on the bar associations, that's number one. I would want to interview them, and money wouldn't be a part of it. The issue would be, are you qualified? Do you have the right temperament? Do you have the intelligence to do these very important things? Because for lawyers, we see judges all the time, but for people who aren't lawyers, who aren't in the legal system, you'll see maybe a judge maybe once or twice in your life. But that could be the most crucial thing in your life. We're talking about someone's freedom. We're talking about whether or not someone gets compensated for malpractice, let's say. We're talking about a pension to make sure that the contract actually is fulfilled on a pension bill. That's all decided by judges. So you have to remove the political analysis of when you see whether someone is qualified, whether a judge should be on the bench. And the problem is the entire answer and the entire tenure of the committeeman has been purely a political question, and you got to remove the politics out of it.
Aaron, go ahead and keep the microphone here. We're going to move on to question number 4. Oh, you want to respond? Okay.
I'm going to ask Aaron, because I'm not an attorney and I don't come before judges. I'm going to ask Aaron what he thinks of a couple of the ones that I mentioned. Kathy Pantley is one of the judges that actually I had the opportunity to slate. Colleen Sheen, I don't know if you've been before her, or Sharkey. I don't know if you'd mention what your thoughts are on those three.
This is not the time as far as who I think about particular judges. There are some good judges and there's some bad ones. I can tell you many stories about particular judges that this committeeman has slated, and I'll give you an example. So a few weeks ago, I was approached by one of the committeeman's representatives, and they asked me if I would get out of the race, they would slate me for a judge. Now, I could be the worst lawyer in the world, but they were willing to slate me to get me out of the race. Was I qualified? Was I skilled? Would I have the right temperament? No. You don't know that. You have no clue. But because I was a political threat, it was worth it to stick me on the bench so people's lives are at stake in front of me just for a political reason, to get me out of the race.
Nick, you didn't use your full minute there, so I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to respond to that.
First of all, I had nothing to do with that, and I do not know who he's talking about, all right? So that's one thing, okay? I'm happy to have him in the race, and I think it's good for democracy. But to slate him for a judgeship to get out of the race is unconscionable, and I would never have been part of it, or wouldn't have nothing to do with it. So that's where my feelings are on that.
Okay, good. Let's move on to the next question, please. Aaron, we'll start with you. Next question here, question number 5 out of 10. What are you satisfied in the current Cook County Democratic Party, and what are you dissatisfied with in the current Cook County Democratic Party?
2 minutes for that answer?
Yeah. You can split it up if you want, minute each.
All right, I'm done with the good part. Look, the problem is that in our local party elections, in our local parties, we think of Democrats, we think of the sort of the national view of Democrats. And the problem is the Democrats here aren't Democrats. I don't even know what they are. Are they Republicans? I have no clue. But what they really are is about themselves, about how they maintain their power. The chairman of the Democratic Party, there's no ideology there. There's no views. There's no political philosophy of how we can improve government, how we can move society forward and move the county forward. It's purely of how you maintain your power. And that's what's so interesting about this position. On one hand, it's such a great opportunity to create and help democracy, to make sure we're all participating, to make sure everyone feels like they have a stake in this process. But on the other hand, it's very scary because you can use it to help maintain and create greater power. And that's what the Cook County Democratic Party is doing. It's all about their power. So there's some candidates I agree with who they're endorsing, but you just look at the process. Anita Alvarez, were we going to slate her? No, and now all of a sudden Kim Foxx. They can't even get that right because all they do is move from one embarrassment to another. So if it looks bad, okay, let's slate someone else. Let's endorse someone else. But it's not about what they think is best for the county or best for the state or the city. It's purely about their power. And we need someone in there. We need a group of people in there. We need a movement within the party to make it democratic. And it's not.
Thank you. Mr. Mel?
I was one who voted for not slating anybody for that office, the state's attorney's office. And when they came back and wanted to slate Kim Foxx, who I may be supporting, I was against that at that time. I didn't think that anybody should be slated for that office at that point in time. There are several offices where, in fact, we should not slate somebody. We should let the folks have the opportunity to go out and try to raise the money that they have to raise to be. See, here's a sad situation. Today, there's not anybody in the Senate, I don't think, except maybe Durbin, that's not a multimillionaire. The cost of running commercials. You may have the best candidate, the best judge in the world, but if they can't get on television or they can't capture the media, they don't have a chance. And so the Democratic Party gives good people, and unfortunately, some not so good people, an opportunity to be slated and sometimes get elected. And that's a sad situation. It's unfortunately an issue where money is the driving influence. Everybody talks about subsidized financing for parties. It's absolutely true. Look at the super PACs, how much money they pour in these races. So that's a sad situation. Does the Democratic Party have a stake? They do, but unfortunately, it is sometimes all about the dollars that are raised.
Mr. Goldstein, you want to take another minute?
So we're talking local elections here, okay? Super PACs it's a very important issue in our democracy, but we're talking about local elections and local processes. The Democratic Party in the Cook County Democratic Party has a lot of power and a lot of money. The party right now can actually endorse candidates that maybe don't have the money. Maybe they're not a millionaire, but they're a good candidate. They can actually do good things. The Democratic Party has every ability to interview that person, do background on them, and say, we're going to put them forward because here's a novel idea. They're a good candidate. We're talking as if there's nothing we can do about it. We're running for a position that has power to do something about it. And we're talking as if, well, it'd be nice if we can do that or do that. I think it would be nice if we can do it if I can get elected and become committeeman. Right here is the person that had the power for the last 40 years. Where has it been? That's what we really have to distinguish here.
Mr. Malik, one more minute, please.
No, but we'll go on to another one.
Want to go into the next question? Well, the next question actually has to do with kind of on something, and if you want to go ahead and keep the mic, Dick. It asks about your feelings overall with the current national Democratic Party. And I know this is a local race here, but I think, yeah. We'd like to hear from both of you. Overall, what you're satisfied with the current National Democratic Party and what are you dissatisfied with?
Well, for the first time, we all were excited 8 years ago when Barack Obama and Hillary ran. And it was a Chicago guy having the opportunity to run for President of the United States. And it brought a lot of enthusiasm, it brought a lot of voter attention. Right now, Bernie has done the same thing. Bernie has probably will not get the nomination of the Democratic Party, but will move the Democratic Party in the right direction. will force the candidate who will be endorsed, which is obviously going to be Hillary, I think, pushing her toward some of the goals that Bernie has had that I think a lot of us support. So let me tell you something, I'm much happier with the Democratic Party than I am with the Republican Party, I'll tell you that.
So, as far as the national party, the National Democratic Party, you know, unfortunately, because what the Republicans have done has gone so far to the right, they've created a vacuum that unfortunately the National Democrats have occupied. So as the Republicans get further and further to the right, the Democrats feel that they can occupy that space too. So not on every single level, and there's many levels that there's difference. But on many issues, unfortunately, the Republicans and the Democrats are too similar. And what Bernie has been able to tap into is the economic issues that the Democrats are failing the people on. So there's certainly disappointment on that. That's where money is an absolute crucial thing. You heard Hillary Clinton is speaking at big banks, and it puts into question whether you think Hillary is basically a puppet of the big banks and the big corporations. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. But it comes back to our race here. The faith that people have when you're taking money from an interested party, we're talking 6 figures to speak, that hits home with the voters. So do we have faith that Hillary will stand up on issues of economic reform, on raising the minimum wage, on campaign finance reform? Will she step up when she's taking money? It's the same issues that are here. Can you trust that judge if they had to pay $30,000 to become slated? Can you trust that election judge when it's appointed by the committeeman, and the committeeman has an interest in making sure that a certain result happens? Can you trust the results? And that's what we really need. There's a crisis of trust within the Democratic Party nationally, and we need to restore that. Obviously, as the national election comes, and there'll be the general election, you know, with the odds that the opponent will be Trump, obviously everything gets thrown out the window because we have an evil we need to stop right there.
Go ahead and keep the microphone, Aaron, 'cause I want to get to the